Today, I will be covering the story of 18-year-old Colin Gillis, who is still missing to this day. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video on the channel. And in this one, I have a bit of a different video for you, and I probably won't be doing this type of video again. But I'd read this story about this missing kid that happened way back in like 2012, and I thought it was a really interesting story, and I just wanted to share it with you guys on the channel and get your thoughts on the story. So I'll have some gameplay of COD in the background. Yeah, and basically I'll just be telling the story. I'm reading the story off the internet, so I'll put the website in the description where I got the story from. So hope you guys enjoy this type of video. Let me know if you enjoy this video by leaving a like. Yeah, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 200 subscribers now. I appreciate all the support on the recent videos, and we'll catch you in the next one. Colin was a freshman at the State University of New York at Brockport, about 5 hours away from Tupper Lake. He had been accepted into their pre-med program concentrating in biology. His ultimate goal was to go to medical school and become a doctor, and no one doubted that he would do so. He had adjusted well to college life and found it easy to make friends. John and Patty Gillis, the owners of a woodworking shop in Tupper Lake, were thrilled to have their son home for a few days, and Colin spent most of the day on Saturday with them. The family had dinner together and then watched a college basketball game on television. After watching the game, Colin got ready to go out with some of his high school friends. It was a cold night, with temperatures dropping into the teens, but Colin wasn't bothered by New York winters. Although he was only wearing jeans and a short-sleeved shirt, he had a jacket in the book bag he was planning to take with him. It was around 8:30 p.m. when he left the house, telling his parents he'd be back later. They watched as he left the house, carrying his red and orange backpack. They had no way of knowing that this would be the last time they would see their son. Colin started the night by going to visit with friends who lived just down the street from him. From there, he got a ride with a group of friends to a residence on Lincoln Avenue. It's unclear if Colin and his friends had any concrete plans for the evening, but at some point they decided to leave the Lincoln Drive home and go to a party about 5 miles away. The party, which was at a private residence on Pascangame Road, was being thrown to celebrate the 21st birthday of one of the homeowner's relatives. Colin and his friends weren't really friends with the group holding the party, and they hadn't actually been invited. Of course, in a town as small as Tupper Lake, there are no strangers. They knew some of the people at the party, they just didn't normally hang out with them. Most likely, they had heard that this party was taking place and that there would be plenty of alcohol, so they made a spur-of-the-moment decision to go. Colin and 9 of his friends ended up at the party on Pascangame Road, and things appeared to be fine for a while. At some point, however, an argument broke out between some of the partygoers, and this soon escalated into a physical altercation. It's unclear why the brawl started, but Colin's friends decided it would be best if they left. If someone ended up calling the cops, no one wanted to get busted for underage drinking. Colin, however, refused to go with his friends. He was having a good time and wanted to stay. They tried to persuade him to leave, that they could find another party somewhere, but Colin was adamant about staying. The 9 friends he had come to the party with all left. No one could figure out why Colin was so intent on remaining behind. With his friends gone, Colin was left with a group made up of some people he knew but had never spent time with, and some people he didn't know at all. Police stated that there had been about 40 people at the party before the fighting broke out, and they believed that all of them were local. There were some rumors that there were people from out of town in attendance, but if they were, they never came forward to speak with the police about that night. Colin is believed to have left the party on foot around 1 a.m. Police have stated that the party broke up around 1:30 a.m. It's unclear if the earlier fight had anything to do with ending the party, but it is believed that more than one fight broke out that night, and Colin may have been involved in at least one of them. When Colin left the residence where the party had been held, he walked north up Pascangame Road until it terminated at NY3. Pascangame Road is a winding rural road with no sidewalks and no streetlights, and Colin would have had to walk up a steep incline. The few houses that he passed on this walk would have been mostly obscured from his vision, as they are set 100 or more feet off the road and behind trees. The moon was almost full, which may have provided some navigational assistance, but it wouldn't have been an easy walk to make. When Colin got to NY3, he should have turned right to follow that road back towards his house. For some unknown reason, he turned left on NY3, headed away from Tupper Lake towards the town of Piercefield. Although NY3 is more heavily trafficked than Pascangame Road, There are still no streetlights and no sidewalks, although there are shoulders on each side of the road. The street is lined with trees on both sides, and there is a small guardrail running the length of the road. It is not the kind of road you would expect to see a pedestrian on at 1:40 a.m. on a cold winter night, but that was exactly what Rich Roden Trader saw as he approached the Franklin-St. Lawrence County line on NY3 that night. Rich, who at the time was the editor of Lake Placid News, was driving at the end of the 80-mile trip. He was driving his mother from Massena, New York, to her home in Tupper Lake. He was surprised to see a male figure walk to the direction of Piercefield. Even odder, the man wasn't wearing a coat despite the frigid temperature. Although he was concerned about the man, it was around 1:45 a.m. on a dark road with no streetlights, and he had his elderly mother in the car with him. He didn't feel comfortable stopping, so he kept driving towards Tupper Lake. A state trooper was dispatched to see if the male on NY3 needed help, but when he arrived in the area where Rich reported seeing the man, he found no one. He drove up and down the highway for a couple of miles in each direction, but never spotted anyone walking along the road. He did not pass any other vehicles either. There was rarely much traffic on that stretch of road. Eventually, he gave up. Austin Toohey and his cousin Jordan Amell. Austin also saw Colin walking around Jordan that night at 1:30 a.m. Austin was driving Jordan to his home in Pierceville when they saw Colin turning onto NY3 from Pascungame Road. Austin stopped and asked Colin if he wanted a ride, but he told them he was waiting for a friend to pick him up. Then after Austin dropped Jordan off in Pierceville, he saw Colin for a second time. As he was heading back to the Tupper Lake, he once again stopped and asked Colin if he wanted a ride, and once again Colin declined. Austin said that Colin was near the entrance to Bruce Richards Logging Company, located on NY3 less than 1,000 feet from the Pascungame Road intersection, and was heading west towards Pierceville. If true, Colin was not walking at a very fast pace. It's unknown if Colin was actually waiting for a friend to pick him up. Cell phone service was spotty in that area, and it doesn't appear he was able to get a hold of anyone to ask for a ride. When Colin didn't return home from his night out, his parents were not initially worried. It was not uncommon for Colin's phone battery to go dead, leaving him with no way to get in touch with them. They just assumed he had ended up spending the night at a friend's home, which was what he had done on Friday night. They had made multiple attempts to try and reach him on his cell phone, but were unable to get through. They started calling his friends, but no one had seen or heard from him since the previous night. By 5:30, panic was starting to set in. They called and reported Colin missing. The state police immediately launched a massive search effort. On Monday morning, the New York State Police, the Tupper Lake Police, and the Department of Environmental Conservation worked together to coordinate the search, joined by hundreds of Colin's family members, friends, and volunteers. They combed through the woods and streams, searching for any sign that might indicate they were on the right track. They were aided from above by military helicopters from Fort Drum. The search was conducted in an extremely organized and professional way, with searchers walking shoulder to shoulder to make sure they covered every inch of ground. Volunteers who were smokers were reminded to enjoy a cigarette before the search began because there would be no one stopping for smoke breaks once they had started moving. At a press conference held on Monday afternoon, police announced that they had recovered 2 items believed to belong to Colin. The items which police wouldn't identify at that stage of the investigation had been found on NY3 near Setting Pole Dam Road, in the area where Rich had reported seeing the teen. Several newspapers featured articles about Colin in it and identified the 2 items that had been found as the driver's license and 1 shoe. They were half right. Colin's driver's license had been recovered, his shoe had not. During the search, several shoes were found, but none of them belonged to Colin. It would take 2 years before the second item was identified to the public as a tobacco pipe. On Tuesday, the focus of the search shifted to areas around the Raquette River, Raquette Pond, and the Pierceville Flow. Conditions were rough, as snow was waist-deep in some areas. While volunteers participated in the ground search for Colin, most of them lacked the training and experience required to search the waterways. Both DEC rangers and members of the Search and Rescue of the Northern Adirondack, specially trained in wilderness searching techniques, led 18 search crews of 8 to 10 people each in scouring the woods and the waterways between Tupper Lake and Piercefield. If Colin was somewhere out there, these were the people who would find him. Although those without training weren't able to take part in the physical search, that didn't deter them from helping out. Volunteers had donated more than 10,000 hours of their time in the search for Colin in the first few days alone. Now, they were generous in their donations of money and supplies. They made sure that all those still searching the rough terrain had everything they needed to search safely and provided them with hot meals. but as days continued to drag on and no additional evidence was found, it was hard to stay optimistic. On Saturday night, state police set up a checkpoint on NY3 where Colin was last seen. Troopers were hoping that there would be people passing through who had come through the same time the previous Saturday. They stopped each car as they approached, handing out flyers with Colin's information. Drivers who had used the same road the night Colin disappeared were asked if they had noticed anything unusual at that time. Fortunately, no one remembered seeing the young man. On Monday, March 19th, the week-long search for Colin was downgraded to limited continuous status. Police would continue to do periodic searches of the area, both on the ground and from the air, but there would be no more large-scale searches unless new information warranted one. Detectives continued their investigation into the disappearance and were looking into allegations that Colin had been involved in some sort of altercation at the party. They interviewed all those who had been with Colin that night, and they were also monitoring Facebook and other forms of social media to see if they could gather any clues what might have happened. While the search for Colin in Tupper Lake was being scaled back, his classmates at SUNY Brockport were returning from spring break and heading back to class. Although they knew that it wasn't probable, Colin's family was hoping that he would show up at school that Monday and return to class like nothing had happened. When he didn't, they all felt somewhat deflated. Administrators at the college checked to see if there had been any activity on Colin's student ID, which had been swiped to enter any of the buildings on campus. He had last swiped it on March 9th, the day he left for spring break. It was never used again after that. Detective interviews many of the students who lived in the same dorm as Colin, and everyone had only nice things to say about him. He was well liked and had made many friends, and they had been stumped when they learned he was missing. Some had trouble focusing for a while afterward, worried it could happen to them. John and Patty Gillis announced that they were offering a $10,000 reward for information that led to Colin. Months went by, but there were still no signs of Colin except for the couple of personal items found on the day of the search. There was no evidence found to indicate what might have happened. Spring turned into summer and summer turned into fall. Police asked hunters to keep an eye out for anything unusual they might see while out hunting in the woods. The case grew cold. It's been more than 8 years since Colin vanished. His case is still open and detectives still follow up on any leads they get, but they are no closer to determining what happened to him. There are many theories, but little evidence to back any of them up or rule them out. Early on, it was suggested that someone could have accidentally hit Colin with their vehicle, then panicked and hit his body. Police are relatively certain that was not the case here. The road was not heavily traveled, and there were very few people on that night. Hit-and-run accidents tend to leave evidence behind, and they found nothing suggesting one took place. It can't be ruled out entirely, though. Colin was seen walking close to the road, and one of the drivers that night saw him almost hit him. But hitting someone at a relatively fast speed, the speed limit on NY3 is 55 miles an hour, would have likely left easily discernible evidence, whether part of a car, a broken mirror, blood, or skid marks. On a road with no street lights, attempting to remove all the evidence would have been a daunting task. One of the more obvious possibilities is that Colin stumbled off the road and into the woods, where he fell victim to the frigid cold. It would certainly make sense, but police believed if this is what happened, they would have found Colin. The searches they conducted were very methodical, literally leaving no stone unturned. In addition to volunteer ground searches and aerial searches, they went through the area with canine units specifically trained to find dead bodies. They came up empty-handed. One of the more puzzling aspects of this case is the fact that Colin was walking in the wrong direction. If he was trying to go home, if he was intoxicated or slipped some kind of drugs, could have account for his disorientation. Yet it's possible Colin went towards Pierceville on purpose. Rumors are bound about what happened at that party that night, and there are some people who believe that Colin was involved at least one of the fights that broke out, and he ended up getting killed. Foul play is definitely possible in Colin's case. The question is where it took place. Colin was seen on NY3 by at least 3 drivers. This means that even if he did get involved in a physical altercation at the party, he was able to walk away. According to the witnesses, Colin was walking alone on NY3. No one reported seeing anyone else walking along the road at any point that night, so it doesn't appear that anyone was following Colin on foot. It's possible that someone drove after him and caught up with him after the witnesses saw him, but there were no signs of struggle on the road. There was snow on the ground. Police should have been able to tell if a fight had taken place on the shoulder of NY3. They found nothing. It is as if Colin simply disappeared into thin air. Colin Gillis is still missing. He was 18 at the time of his disappearance on March 11, 2012. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, was 6'1", and weighed 170 pounds. He had a scar on his left shoulder. He was last seen wearing a men's size medium short-sleeved American Eagle V-neck shirt with a black stripe, size 32-34 blue boot cut Levi jeans, and size 10 red high-top Nike Air sneakers. He was carrying an orange LL Bean backpack containing a reversible black and red LL Bean coat. There's a $25,000 reward being offered in his case. If you have any information about Colin, please contact the New York State Police. That was the full story about Colin Gillis's disappearance. He's still not found to this day, and this story completely baffled me, and I really feel for the family on what happened to him. It is definitely a very mysterious mystery. I did read some posts on Reddit, so you guys can go ahead and look at those online yourself if you want to. I'm not going to bring them up in the video just in case they aren't true. Some people who had known Colin posted some things on Reddit about it. And yeah, there's a whole thing on there about it, and you guys can go take a look at that yourself. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This was definitely a different one. But let me know if you guys want to see any more of this. Leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Leave me a comment and let me know your opinion on the story. And we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe.